Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 7 of Spy Family, and I'm really excited because last episode we got to meet Damian. Anya's in the academy. She's got a bolt already, which is not good because she punched a kid. Not just any kid, but the second son of the target that Loid is after. So things aren't exactly going to Loid's plan, and that's all right, right? Sure, it's fine. Everything will be great. No problems, but I love that we're getting into the academy. I've honestly, ever since I found out that that was the mission, is Anya had to infiltrate the academy and befriend the politician's son. I was all about that. And so I've been excited for that for a while. So I'm pretty excited. We're halfway through the season, the first core. So I'm excited that the second core, the second half of this, will likely be dealing with the academy. And so I don't know if the season's going to end out with that or if the second season is going to pick up where the first season left off. I don't want to know, but I'm really excited for the second half of the season to see what all shenanigans we get into and to see Loid get some more gray hairs, because it seems like that's going to happen with him because he can't control Anya. He can't be there watching her, so he's got to put all of his faith in her that she's going to get the job done. And luckily, Anya's a psychic, or, well, maybe not lucky, because her being able to see their thoughts might not be a good thing. So we'll see how that goes. But I do have a few comments before we start, just a few. Wushin Sweebian noted on Patreon that episode 5 was about 80% anime only, which I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense, but at the same time, I'm actually impressed by Wit Studios and Cloverworks. We'll talk about them in a second. But I'm actually really, really surprised and impressed by that, because normally I hate filler because the studio that does it or the writers that are involved, they don't get the tone or they don't get the characters or something. It's off. I usually hate filler because something is off and it doesn't seem natural and it doesn't seem to fit with the rest of the show canonically. And not just the fact that the plot isn't connected, but the characterization's usually off. Like the dialogue's usually, the tone of it doesn't match up. So I'm actually thoroughly impressed that this episode 5, if it was 80% filler, it matched up really well with the tone of the show and the characterization. So I'm actually really impressed by that. I'm like, awesome. If this show's going to go hard on its filler, I'm here for it. Because usually filler I want to skip, but that's all right. And so Wushin Sweebian also noted that Wit Studio was the main one in charge of episode 5, and it switches back and forth between them and a studio called Cloverworks. And so that's interesting. I've not noticed like the animation or the style changing between episodes, so it's kind of cool that they've been able to keep it so consistent. So that's good to note. JC Alexi was my other comment, and JC Alexi talked about how in the manga, Loid was trained on how to not get drunk. And I was like, okay, so that would make sense. He's a spy. He's been trained how to handle his liquor. I'm like, how that works, though, is curious, because usually people's bodies react differently to alcohol. So I guess we'll let it slide. I guess he got drunk a lot to build up a tolerance, I suppose, or something like that. But also JC Alexi noted that he's kind of like Batman. And I was like, yes, Loid is very much like Bruce Wayne. He doesn't have any superpowers, doesn't have any inhuman strength. He's just really, really talented, a really good spy, has lots of resources, and he's physically in shape. So he is basically Batman, but he's Bond Man too. So there's that. But those are my comments about the episode before this. So I'm really excited to get into episode 7 and see what all we find out and what all happens with our academy and shenanigans. So we are going to start episode 7 of Spy Family. And it does have a post-credit scene, so I've not forgot that. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Oh my gosh, this episode was beyond precious. Beyond precious! I loved this episode so much. It was so cute. It was so cute. Yeah, Damian has no hope. Just like Damian has no hope. He has a crush on Anya, the commoner, this peasant girl. I'm like, dude, if you make it to your teenage years, it will be worth it. Because Anya's so cute. I'm sure she'll be very pretty when she gets older. Mm-hmm. And we can only hope Damian takes after his mother, because his dad looks quite frightful and looks like a Tim Burton character. So hopefully his mom is actually really pretty and he takes after her. Because as a kid, he's like a cute kid. So I'm like, we'll see about that. So yeah, God, this episode was great. This episode was wonderful. And so I was going to touch base on this because we kind of talk about it a little bit, that Desmond, Damian's dad, he is, the leader of this political party. And so I was wondering at some point if we were going to touch base on the idea that is Loid going to have to assassinate him? But he kind of touches on that that's not necessarily the case because they're trying to foster peace between these two countries. So I'm like, is Loid going to threaten him? Is he going to blackmail him? Is he going to infiltrate to try to get peace negotiations lined out? How's this going to go? Because there's kind of an underlying, tension there because on the one hand, Anya knows that her dad is a spy. He knows, but she thinks he's trying to get world peace between these two countries, right? She thinks it's all going to end well, that she just wants that her papa just wants the two countries to get along. But I'm like, if Loid has to assassinate the Desmond guy, that's a big deal because for Anya, she's going to be like, you're basically killing this boy that's in her classmate's father and leaving him without a dad. And so she's an impressionable little kid. So how's that going to go over? So there's a lot of things that I'm like, Loid, this mission is messed up. Let me say first and foremost, this mission is messed up because one, they wanted him to infiltrate. They wanted him to get a wife involved, to get a woman involved that he had no idea who she was and drag her into this and make her have all these life changes. But then they're dragging a literal child into this mission that is going to be severely impacted by this no matter how it goes. And so I'm like, why is this is not a smart move? No, this is, you're changing people's lives and altering them forever. And you're just doing it for the sake of this mission. I mean, at least Loid signed up for this. Loid knows what he was doing from the start as a spy, but Anya and Yor have no clue what they're involved in and what the repercussions of it are going to be. Anya thinks she knows, but for Anya, for a 5-year-old kid, world peace, she isn't thinking about all the things that are entailed in getting that accomplished that Loid is. And so I'm like, this could all blow up and be something really, really bad. So I'm like, ugh. So I'm just going to file that away. I'm just going to file it away and be like, yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, right? Mm-hmm. But I like that Loid is mulling all of this over as he's making the omelet. And I totally relate to him, squirting the ketchup and just going, and just spreading out. So know what that is. But Loid's like, damn it. What are we going to do? So so we go back to the school. I'm really glad that so far Becky has not been, that Loid has not gotten Becky away from Anya because Anya needs Becky. She's her only friend at that school. And Becky is her friend because Anya stood up for her. And so I really am glad that Loid just kind of called her to the office and left her there and didn't get it to where her and Anya couldn't see each other on a daily basis. I'm glad that's not the case. But man, this episode definitely cranking up the tension when it came to that apology. I was like, oh my God. I love Yor's little pajama dress. And it's clear that Yor and Anya are not morning people. They're like, mm-mm. I like that. Okay, so he puts out the omelets. 2 of the omelets look perfect and the one omelet looks bad. I'm assuming the omelet looks bad he kept for himself. And then Anya coming around the corner, peeking around, looking like a zombie. Girl, understand, I have to get up early for work and I'm not a morning person. I'm a night owl. So in the mornings, I'm downing coffee and just being I need to wake up. So, but as a kid, you can't do that. So, or at least Loid doesn't seem the type that he's giving her any coffee. And so I do like the idea that Loid tells her, he's like, don't dwell in the past, just move forward. There is that little optimism that Loid throws out that he's like, figuring out what we can do next is far more constructive than dwelling on the past. He's like, we can wallow in the past, but that's not going to change the future. So let's just leave it behind us. Today is a new day. We'll be constructive, focus on what we can do now in the present, and that will hopefully have a positive impact on the future. So I like that Loid is a bit of an optimist when it comes to that. Right, but he is overthinking so much in this whole thing. And Yor's just him and Yor are such a great balance because Yor's whoa, calm down. Let's bring it down a notch. And Loid's just type A, on point. So yeah, this is so cute when she was at the bus with them and she's got her little hands on the window with her little hat and she's like, okay, gotta go. So freaking cute. adorable. And then Becky shows up with the limo that the butler drives. But it's a funny disconnect because Becky, she views it as something, or at least she puts on the front, now whether or not she really believes this, but she puts on the front that, oh, I have my own driver that drives me to school. But then it's like, did your parents see you off with that driver or not? Or do they just, does your butlers and maids do everything for you and the parents aren't involved at all? We don't know that yet. So it's going to be interesting to see if like Anya goes over to Becky's house and sees how things are in Miss Rich Girl's castle. And I like that she calls her Miss Rich Girl. And I like that Becky's like, no, just call me Becky. I do love her little bomb hair barrette. It's freaking adorable. I love it. Her dad's also in the military, so it kind of fits. But yeah, so then they stumble across old Damian Desmond, and he has a little bandage on his face. I'm surprised the parents haven't contacted Loid and them, but I'm really surprised they haven't actually. That was one thing that wasn't brought up at all in this, is one, we didn't see what Damian's parents' reaction were to the fact that he got punched, or his brother's. So I'm waiting until we meet the older brother to see what that's going to be like and see if we meet the parents in this episode or not. But yeah, he has the two friends, the bowl cut and the cone head, and Becky's like, bleh. And it's funny because Becky and his parents work together, so that's funny. And the little bowl cut guy gets onto her, and she's like, it's already only morning and you're already obnoxious. But Damian, his blushy face, this boy has it bad. He is so tsundere for Anya. He has the biggest crush on her and doesn't understand he has a crush on her. Oh, honey, it's over. You're done. It was a done deal last episode. It's a real done deal now. Because Anya's super cute. And, like, his look when she had, like, the cry face, and he was like, nope, it's too much. I'm like, honey, you just need to hold out. Just wait till y'all are adults, and it'll be perfect. It was frustrating that Becky, like, kept dragging her away. Which, for Becky, she's like, just leave them alone. They're not worth your time. And Anya's like, but world peace! And then we have Loid. He was worried, so he came to check on her. Loid, the worried father figure. And him just being so angry, being like, stop getting in the way, black belt girl. Like, oh my God, his annoyed face. Loid is a good dad. He just doesn't quite understand all the nuances of being a father because he literally just picked up this gig like 3 months ago. He didn't have Anya from birth, right, to go through the motions. So he's experiencing just how not only is it hard for him to be a father, but you can't control other people. You can only control them to an extent, right? So he can only set up the situations to where Anya can apologize to Damian, but he can't actually make her do it. So for the first time, Loid is having to deal with the fact that he's not perfectly in control of the situation. And we talked about that last episode, but it's funny because Lloyd's like, I don't know what to do. And so I like that he contemplates for a hot second that Becky could be like under orders from the enemy organization to stop their mission. And then he like holds off and he's like, wait, no, these are children. Like, thank you, Loid. I'm glad you realized that these are actually literal 6-year-olds that are involved in this. They don't know what's going on, right? But he makes this comment that first impressions are the most important thing when forming a group of friends at school, which is curious because we don't know really much anything about Loid's background. We know that he was like abandoned in the streets as like an orphan, or so we think, at Anya's age, but we don't know how his school life was. He's revered by most of the spies in the Wise Agency, so I'm assuming that he has gone through the motions and made good first impressions with everybody he meets so that he can develop that friend group. But the sad thing is, he treats it so clinically, like it's just like a manual, like here's how you make friends. It's like, there's a unknown variable to making friends that you can't go by a book. You can't, at some point, there is a natural factor to it. You can try to be somebody's friend all day long, but if your personalities are not compatible and that person doesn't want to be your friend, it will never work. So you can want to be somebody's friend, but if it's not going to work, it's not going to work. And a textbook isn't going to help you solve that problem. So it's funny that Loid, his whole entire, like, systematic approach he has a systematic approach to making friends, which is like one of like the most natural things that you can do that you don't need a manual for. But Loid kind of has a systematic approach to it, which is interesting. So yeah, and so in the classroom for the math class, Anya immediately notices that nobody is wanting to sit by them. Except that one girl. The one girl that looks like Hermione in the front row, she's like, I don't care. Maybe she'll join their friend group. But everybody else is like cluttered to the back of the room. They're like not anywhere near anybody. And then the other girls are like, oh, she's barbaric and a delinquent. And they question whether Becky's a delinquent. And then we have the boys with the crazy haircuts being like, she hit him out of nowhere without a reason. That's nuts. And she can hear what all they're thinking. And they're like, what if she hits me too? And it's so sad. Anya's like I want Anya just to apologize to all of them, but she's like, school is scary. Because that's such a crazy thing, because it's bad enough when you're in school and you get bullied and you think in your head, like, maybe they don't like me, but Anya's getting confirmation that they don't like her. And that's the worst thing, that she really only has Becky. Becky's like her only friend. But luckily, Becky's like, people are shallow. They just judge what they see on the surface. Like, that's not cool. And I'm glad that I really don't want Anya to read Becky's mind, because what I'm afraid is going to happen is that Anya is going to think that Becky is her friend, and then she's going to read her mind, and then Becky's going to be thinking something that's kind of mean, and then Anya's going to get really sad by it. So I'm hoping that Anya doesn't read her mind. But if you look now, when they go back, there's like more kids. There's like another girl that's set beside the Hermione looking girl. There's a guy that like has like a square head back there. And then Damian's in the very back corner. And she's like, call me Becky, not rich girl. So then the math teacher comes in. She's like, I hope we become the best of friends. And I'm the only one who knows how good you are, Anya. Like, she's so nice. And so she's like, school is scary, but I think it might be okay. And she shows her like the penguin pin, and Anya's really happy by it. I'm like, oh, so I'm glad that she has Becky in her life. But then we come back to Damian and his friends, and they're like, why don't you give her a piece of your mind? And he's like, and then he like he touches his cheek when he thinks that. And it's like, oh, honey, it's over for you. And he says, my name is Damian Desmond, one of the sons of a prestigious family, born into a life of privilege. No one had defied me before. The Desmond Group's chairman's son. I've never even been hit by my older brother. So yeah, so at least his older brother seems halfway decent. And yet. And he's like, here. And he's like, this is the first time I've had to deal with such. It's so funny. I'm like, oh, honey, yes, with such. And she like looks up and sees him. And she's like, because she can read his mind. And then he's like, oh, it's great. And she's like, oh my God, what's wrong with this kid? Like, oh, girl, no. I'm waiting for him to admit that he has a crush on her and he likes her, and she's going to read his mind and hear that and be like, what? So, but then I wonder if that happens, is she going to do like Loid and be like, it's for the mission. I'll be his girlfriend for the mission. Which little kids, like girlfriends and boyfriends for like little elementary school kids is like holding hands and like sitting under Star Lab together or something. We had a big lab in grade school that like was an inflatable dome, and it played like, we did like lessons on constellations and everything. We called it Star Lab, and it was like integral to my childhood. But it was like if you were a boyfriend or girlfriend with someone, you held hands in Star Lab, and that was like the risque thing. We were quite innocent summer children, as you should be in grade school. So, okay, I'm sorry, but this is math class for kindergarten. You're doing geometry? No. No, angles for 6-year-olds. I'm an English major, so my side of the brain that is geared towards language and critical analysis of literary texts, that's where my brain is. Math, I could do math in high school, but I hated it. I was just like, ugh. I was like, what? Why? And I hated geometry because proofs, you had to give all these reasons, and I'm like, I found the answer. And they're like, but how? And I'm like, doesn't matter. I was like, I found the answer. Done. And so, God, just seeing this angle makes me want to throw up. I'm like, no, I hate math. So I'm like, I don't blame Anya for falling asleep. But the teacher's like, what a delinquent. I'm like, no, Anya, girl, try your best. And even Becky's like, oh no. And she's like, I gotta apologize. And so she says it'll bring peace it won't bring peace if I don't. And Becky assumes that she's like, oh, well, you mean peace for your school life? Yeah, I guess. He could make your life really hard if you don't, apologize to him. So at least that's not an issue. But then Becky's like, don't worry. I'm on your side, Anya. And I'll protect you no matter what. Which is good. I'm glad Anya has a friend like that. But then the janitor I like has the glasses and the nose, like Loid has the disguise on his face. He's like, no, it's not. And that's when she thinks she hears, she's like, Papa. Like, oh. And so she knows he's there. Oh, God. And the thing of it is, I do like the science class. I'm more a kinesthetic learner, so I like hands-on outside things. Like, that's a really good way to learn. So I like that he's teaching the kids how light reflection works. That seems more like a kindergarten thing to teach them. That's more appropriate than trigonometry. All right. But Loid, honey, the thing of it is that she's just, I love that intense pressure where she's like, what is this? The thing of it is, Loid doesn't understand that Anya's psychic. So he thinks that she needs all the help she can get, knowing that she has to apologize. But all it's doing is adding more stress to Anya because she can read minds. She does know she needs to apologize. So him just saying it over and over again is just piling on the stress for her to do it. So I'm like, Loid, and it's kind of like a lesson of you don't need it's like, let her go. Let her be independent, Loid. Like, don't be a helicopter dad, which is what he's being in this episode. He's just hovering over her any chance he can get. To the point where he's even giving her a different language book. I'm like, she's going to fail her language class because you've given her a different book. And he's cut out a thing about being sorry and taped it into the book. Oh my God. But then John reflected upon his actions and thought sometimes it's just better to admit you're wrong and get along with others. Oh my God. It's great. And then lunchtime, and she decides to go to the cafeteria. Wow. And it shows like an older classman leading all of the younger kids. It feels very Harry Potter where there's like the older, like the prefect leading them to the cafeteria, the younger kids. And so I like Becky's like, man, these lessons are brutal from day one. Loid took his time to carve sorry into the bushes. It's absolutely ridiculous. Oh my God. Wow. And even put the sorry on the back of somebody walking by her. Wow. So they have where you can order anything for lunch in the cafeteria. Like bougie as hell cafeteria. I want them donuts on the shelf. Them donuts look amazing. But yeah, what they have on here? They have, like for kids, I guess it's for the teens too. Like they can get cocoa, tea, a latte or coffee, orange juice, apple juice, milk, acerola juice. What is that? But then for the lunch, they have mac and cheese, eggplant with meat sauce. So if you're, but it says eggplant with meat sauce, so not if you're vegetarian. Roast beef, curry rice, chicken steak, almond rice, hamburger steak, beef steak, a hot dog, which makes sense, meat sauce spaghetti, aglio e olio. What is that? Salmon, meuniere, salad, squidding spaghetti, a muffin, sandwich, and then they have cheesecake, scone, cookie, donut, chiffon cake, caramel pudding, pound cake, and ice cream. I'm like, that is amazing. I want my cafeteria to have all of these options as well. I like that there's like one traditional Japanese dish, which is the omuri rice. And she's like, that's the one I want. Very cute. And I like that Becky's like, he's nowhere near as talented as my chef. I'm like, I kind of want Anya to go to Becky's house. I think that'd be funny. I think maybe, like I said in the last episode, there's a chance that even if Anya doesn't get a chance to go to Damian's house, since Damian's dad and Becky's dad are business partners, maybe the Desmond leader will show up at Becky's house for a meeting with her dad, and Damian will have to come along too, and they'll all be there at the same time. Maybe that will be it. I don't know. But yeah, the almond rice was sorry, and she's just like, what a bizarre dish. I love Loid. And he's got his hair slicked back like you can do this, Anya. Come on, you got this. And then in comes Damian, and he's just like looking around where to go. And Becky's like, go eat in your dorm. So he does have a dorm. Okay. So they established at the beginning of the episode that some of the kids don't drive to work. They just stay in the dorms, which is kind of sad if Damian is living there in the dorm and he's not at home with his family. Like, I feel like they're just adding these little layers with Damian's character. So it's going to be interesting to see how they all add up. But yeah, Loid's face when he's like looking at Becky like holding back, he's like, that stupid little brat. Loid, no, don't take away her only friend. But he calls her to the office and leaves. It's great. So that leads Anya to like act on her own and be like, now's my chance to apologize. Let me go do it. And I love that she goes right in front of them, and Damian's like, and she goes to the table, but it's too tall. She can barely see over it. So she runs around to the other side, which is freaking cute and adorable. And then like goes in front of him. And I like that he had like the roast beef. I think that's what he had to eat. And his friends are like, you want to fight again? So I like that both Anya and Damian have their own set of friends. Like there's the conehead guy and the bowl cut guy. They're Damian's friends. And then Becky is her friend. But then Damian's like, no, leave her alone. Let me handle this. He's like, shut up, you two. And he keeps touching the little thing. These are 6-year-old kids, but I'm rooting for Damian and Anya so much. Because I'm like, Damian, I feel like deep down inside, Damian's not a bad person. He's just a tsundere. And so I'm rooting for them so much. I'm like, oh, come on. And then he's like, give her a what for? And then he goes to like tell her off. But he can't say anything because he's too embarrassed because she's too cute. Why do I find it hard to speak when she's in front of me? Well, there's a pretty obvious explanation. You have a crush on her and you don't know what to say. And like his heart's all messed up. But Anya doesn't know that he's in love with her because the thing of it is that Damian can't describe what he's feeling. So she doesn't know it either. And so she's like, oh, this is weird. I have felt a weird chill. I'm like, so we don't know if I don't think she has a crush on him yet. But she's just like, oh, this is odd. I need to apologize quick and run away. But the words won't come out. And then she hears what they're calling her. And they're calling her like Uggo Face and Raccoon Girl and Gorilla Girl. Like they're so mean to her. Get your filthy commoner germs off of us. I like she turns into the raccoon. But I like the little thing in the background where it's her in like the devil costume with the pitchfork. Like what? And then she's like, my stubby legs. Makes me think of Hanako-kun because Yashiro, who's a character in Hanako-kun, she gets made fun of her for her stubby legs too. And she's like, I'm really sorry that I hit you yesterday. And it's so cute. And Damian's like, what? And she's like, I wanted to be friends with you. Oh my God. And just her hair blowing softly in the breeze with the tears rolling down her face. And then the rose blooms. Like, Damian, it's over. He's doomed. My thing was that Anya apologizes and Loid thinks that she's done so well. And Damian has like the big blushy face where he's like she felt bad for me. She's so demure. And Loid's like, she didn't need me to interfere at all. Good job, Anya. Good job apologizing. I thought Loid got the impression that Damian had a crush on her. And that's why he was like, oh, but Loid's clueless. He's like, no, she defied me right to my face. And so he's like, yeah, he can't admit that he really likes her. And so, of course, because he can't admit it, he does the tsundere thing and like pushes off his emotions like, I don't like you, and runs off. And Loid doesn't get it. I'm like, Loid doesn't understand like that he has a crush on her. And he's like, she's a commoner. I would never. No, never. It's too embarrassing. And she's like, what? And he's like, I can't admit that I'm in love with a common girl. I'd rather die than admit it. I'll never forgive you. My pride won't allow it. Wow. And they're like, well said, Lord Damian. And so they run off to go find him. But poor Loid is like, she failed. Oh, and his face. His face is awful. He looks like he's aged 10 years. I was like, oh no, Loid. And just collapses. And Anya's like, Becky, like she calls for a friend. It's like, oh. So anyway, so we go back home. And Loid is trying to like get her since plan B won't work in his mind. I'm like, no, plan B will work. It just is going to take some time. But it's time you don't have. So plan A it is. So I like these like plan A it is. And so he's trying to get her to study and do well in the class. And he says, you're not going to get to watch the spy cartoon unless you do well. And so that part isn't bad. Like, you know, telling him like, no, you need to get your homework done first before you watch the TV. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm like, that's pretty parenting 101, right? You don't get the reward of watching something fun until you get done with what you need to do. But when he says, come on, I'm like, Loid, no, you don't say that as a dad. Like, no, like, she's 6 years old. You can't expect her to immediately understand this. You need to help walk her through it and explain it. And Loid just expects her to just, why don't you know this? Easy answer. This is easy. Why don't you know it? Loid's not a very good teacher. He's not a very good teacher right now, yet. That may change as we go through the series, but for this episode, he's not a very good instructor. And we'll talk about how they might be able to remedy this problem at the end of this episode, which I think they're going to do, but we're not there yet. But he's like, oh, come on, you can do this. This isn't that hard. And Anya, she's like trying to understand what he's saying in his head, and she thinks that she'll just, oh, well, I'll just listen to what Papa is saying, and that'll give me the answer so I can get through this and watch the spy show. But instead, she goes through this myriad of things he's thinking about. If her grades deviate too much from the norm, it might make people suspicious, which would the school be wary of her, and the Desmonds. There are other methods such as excelling in sports or community service, but in order to halt getting Tonitrus bolts from bad grades or being expelled from them, we need to get her academic skills up so she can get stable grades. If Anya puts in the effort, carelessly becoming someone else in order to infiltrate and get close to someone is risky. If worst happens, Wise won't keep quiet since they're already on high alert against Western spies, which means we basically need to proceed with caution. I could enter the faculty room and alter documents, though honestly, the most absolute way to get into the social gathering is to infiltrate it, but over the past few years, fellow agents have. But as far as the progress goes, the best way is to maximize academic efficiency within the family. Like, he's just thinking of all these various scenarios to help Anya get to be the Imperial Scholar, but he's not thinking of her well-being at all. And she's just like about to croak. She's like, no, I can't do it. She's like, it's too much. And so then Yor comes up, and Yor's like, oh, are you okay? And she's like, I'll read Mama's mind. Maybe she can help. And so she goes to read Yor's mind. And Yor at first seems like she can help. She's like, okay, let's think it over together. Like she has the very calm, like motherly, like, let's just think it over together. It's all right. We can do this. And she's like, the denominator's 5, and that's 1 split into 5. She's like, to make it easier to understand, let's rip off all 4 limbs from a torso. And then of this gingerbread man, but then the head gets in the way. And so she's like, does that leave us with 5? Like, Yor's not incredibly book smart. She is emotionally smart. She is psychologically smart, and she's physically strong. Yor is physically and psychologically strong, and Loid is book smart and intelligent as far as strategizing. And they balance each other out perfectly. But yeah, I love that she's trying to be like, is the answer this? Does the 5 look like an S? And Anya's like, you're no help. I love that Anya's like, I'm doomed. And she's like, oh, are you all right? And then Loid, he's like, what's wrong? Why can't you solve this? I'm like, Loid, honey, that's not how you go about that with a kid. No. And he's like, I honestly can't figure out what it is she can't understand. And Anya's like, it's too much. I don't want to study anymore. And it's like, oh. And I like that Yor's like, it's not a place, because Yor still thinks that Anya is his daughter, like his biological daughter, and she's just playing the wife for the sake of, personal reasons. And so she's like, I don't want to butt in, but she's like, I don't think it's a good idea to be too forceful with her like this. Like, you're just going to make it worse. And he's like, but she needs to study to become Imperial Scholar. And she's like, but is that something she wants for herself? Like, she's a 6-year-old kid. You're forcing this on her. Yeah, it's a good idea for her to become this Imperial Scholar, and Yor doesn't know about the mission. She's like, it's important for her to become that, but like, does she want it? Because if she doesn't want it, you're not going to get very far. You're just going to butt heads with her. She's like, that's not going to work. I like that Loid's like, oh, well, I didn't think of it that way. He's like, it's actually for the mission. So he's like, but... And she's like, I would like Miss Anya to enjoy going to school. Like, yeah, she's like, we don't need to make it to where she doesn't want to go. Because then, Yor doesn't realize that would be bad for the mission, but that would be bad for the mission. So she's like, no, like, let's cool off for a second and, like, think about this. She may need to study so she doesn't get expelled, but, she needs to want to go. And he's like, And then Loid's like, yeah, you're right. And I love that he says she's still very young, so getting good grades is the least of her worries. And then she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to butt into your affairs. And he's like, no, it's fine. It's good that you thought that. And then she won't come out of her room. And then all Anya's thinking about is wanting to become a good daughter and saying she'll do her best at school. And the fact that she studied on her own, it's like, it's so sweet. I was like, oh, Anya. It's so cute that she went to study. And she like looks at the pencil like, I can do it. And so Yor says she reminds me of my little brother. She'll come out eventually. So here's my thing. The brother we established works for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And now he's like, my sister's married. What? She didn't tell me what. If we get to see him next episode, I'm gonna be so excited. I'm so happy because his voice actor, as y'all have pointed out, is the voice actor for Octagawa from Bungo Stray Dogs. He's the voice actor for Flock from Attack on Titan. He is the voice actor for Raichi from Ace of the Diamond. So I know he can scream and yell and be loud. So I'm like, I'm so ready. I'm so excited to see him in action in this series. I hope he comes next episode. And it's episode 8 next episode. Rule of 8. We'll talk about it. Rule of 8 is next week. I'm like, yes. So my theory, though, is that she talks about her brother and how he is a really good student and he's really book smart and he taught her things while they were kids. So I'm wondering if he comes there and Loid and them... But the thing is, Loid can't explain the mission. Will Yuri know about the mission? I don't know. Will Yuri know about Wise? But he's from Ostania, so he shouldn't know about it. So, But my theory, though, is that Yor is going to convince her brother to become Anya's tutor and to teach her how to learn things because he likes learning and he's really good at it. So, and we also established that Yor seems to be quite a bit older than her brother, like 6 or 7 years older than him, because she's, or at least 5 years older than him, because she's a lot bigger than he is. But yeah, I feel like he's maybe going to become the tutor for Anya, which she needs, so that would be good, because Loid's not a very good teacher. That's just not his forte. And so she's like, you should maybe praise Anya a little bit more, like have some positive reinforcement, right? She's like, she needs to study and she needs to do well in school, but you could give her some positive reinforcement, maybe that'd make things better. Maybe just a little bit. And I'm like, yep. He's like, well, I'm not so sure about that. And so I'm not her real father after all. And so then I like when he looks at the coffee cup, like I like that visual, but then it's like, no, for the mission, you are her real father. He's like, you need to be the ideal father. And I'm like, well, ideal anything is subjective. He's like, I have to play the part. That was the foundation of the mission. And he's like, but up until now, nothing's been ideal. No, but you can't idealize parenting. There's too many factors, too many variables. It doesn't work out like that. But he's like, have I really been trying to be like an ideal dad, or have I just been acting like a spy? He's like, I've been acting like a spy and doing really well in that regard, but as Anya's dad, maybe I'm lacking a little bit. Maybe. He's like, I need to, but then I love yours, like, it's going to be okay. Just be more confident in yourself. And you remember what Anya said, we're a perfect 100 points. And I love his little eyes light up there, and yours like, yeah, Anya thinks we're the best, so be confident, it's okay. And I love how his eyes sparkle there. He's like, to Miss Anya, you're a wonderful father. And I love that he's like, I'm grateful to hear you say that. And yours like, I feel like I'm out of place as a stranger. And he's like, no. He's like, you're part of this family, whether you like it or not. Like, you married into this family. You're technically my wife. You're just as big of a part of Anya's life as I am. And she's like, oh, he's like, I'm counting on you to provide whatever I'm lacking. And yeah, that's kind of the deal. She's there to balance him out. And I love it. I freaking love it. So yeah. And he's like, don't say things like, oh yeah, I'm his wife. Like, don't say that outside the house. People might get a little suspicious. But so then we touch base on the idea, if this could be ended by assassinating Desmond alone, there would be countless methods. Donovan's his name. But that won't get us to a true solution. So I like to establish we can't assassinate him. That's not going to bring about world peace. That's not going to be the answer. And so nothing goes well in a short amount of time. You need to know what your target is thinking, what they desire, and gain their trust to and get close to them so you can keep an eye on them. So he's like, we gotta play the long game. We gotta play the long game. Completing mundane missions that require patience makes a true spy. And so he's like, I need to understand my daughter a little bit more. And so, yeah, I do like the passage of time in this show, that when they sat down, it was light outside. And when the clock rings, it's like, oh, it got dark in that room. Like the light hadn't been turned on. I like that little subtle detail in the animation. That's really good to like let them know that time has passed. That's really good. And so then they turn on the light and he goes to Anya's room and she's asleep with the pencil. I have to get the best grades on my test for Papa. And his little soft face, Loid's face, where he's like, it's, God, this scene where he tucks her in is the absolute cutest. The cutest. He's like, I'll go, and the way that he's so soft when he's like, I guess I'll go record that show for her. Like, Loid, husbando, my dude. Oh my God, Loid, I freaking love you. And then she's like, no, Mama, you can't kill Papa. And he's like, what is she dreaming about? He's like a little concerned there, like, oh God, what? And then, yeah, I thought for a second that she was going to like blurt out something about him being a spy in her sleep, but thankfully she did not do that. Oh, but him, a wonderful father, huh? And he's like, I got a long way to go. I have no idea. I wonder what it'd feel like to have a real family. Well, Loid, lucky for you, you're finding out, because that's the scary thing, is he's getting a real family, but it's like at some point it's not going to be real anymore, and what are we going to do? So, yikes. And then we have the end credit scene. So we have the brother showing up. The brother with the cut. He's the one from the ED. And that's the friend from the party with Camilla's husband. He's like, Yuri. And he's like, Dominic's his name. Yeah. And so they're walking up there. And that's when he's like, oh, yeah, how was the party? What was that guy my sister went with? And he's like, oh, yours. Congrats, by the way. You haven't met him? And then I love that he drops the briefcase. My sister got married. Oh, no. He has the trench coat and everything. And he looks a lot like Yor, but with like the short hair and the crazy anime bangs. And he looks so stressed. Oh, I'm so ready. I'm so ready. Yes. Yes, please. So this episode was great. I loved it. It was adorable. I am so ready for episode 8. I have a rule of 8. Anytime there's like a series that is 11 to 13 episodes, the 8th episode is always wonderful. No matter what. It doesn't matter what series it is. It's always a good episode. So I will see if Spy Family lives out the rule of 8 or not. So, but this was a really good episode. So cute. I'm so excited to see Yuri meet Loid. So I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. But in the meantime, please no spoilers. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Spy Family. Bye.